host of Legal Lines. Legal Lines is brought to you by the Massachusetts LGBTQ Bar Association. We're brought to you live the third Wednesday of every month. We should have a very interesting show here today. Our number is 617-708-3290. So at any time you have a question, please feel free to call in. Again, 617-708-3290. My guest is Jack Lewis. He's from out Metro West, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about that organization and what good work they do. Jack, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Tim, for having me.
My pleasure. I found you because I've heard of some of the good things you guys have done. I wanted to have you on the program because you deal with some of the issues we've dealt with on prior episodes. But why don't we start off by telling the audience what exactly is Out Metro West?
So Out Metro West provides 6 meetings a month currently to GLBTQ high school youth in Metro West Boston. We attract youth from all over the area. I think we're currently at 45 high schools represented. And in a safe, supportive space, we provide resources to youth. We have educational opportunities. We have fun together, the youth come together, and through adult-supported and youth-led programming, we try to meet the youth where they are and help provide services that they need.
So when you say Metro West, what exactly is that?
It's an interesting term that I'm still coming to terms with. So our youth come from all over. When we launched, we realized there really wasn't anything for GLBT youth outside of the high schools. In cities outside of Boston, Worcester, I think to the north there was a group in Salem, and to the south there was something on the South Shore. But there really wasn't anything for youth who lived between Newton and the suburbs of Worcester. And so we see our catch area as about, I think, 40 towns in the Boston suburbs all the way to the suburbs of Worcester.
Well, that's great. So there was nothing there. No high school gay straight alliances or anything?
No, there were groups in the high schools, but when we launched, we found that in many high schools, even with vibrant GSAs, gay straight alliances, there was often only one out youth in each grade, and in some schools, only one out youth in the entire school. And so the youth might be present, they might attend meetings, but they were often surrounded by straight allies, which provided some of the resources they needed and some of the support they needed. But for many of these youth, they didn't really know other out 14, 15-year-olds. And so our program was launched to try to bring those youth together so they could learn from each other, they could meet each other, and provide and share resources.
That's great. So this is like 45 different towns. And basically, what kind of services do you provide for them?
So our meetings range from extremely educational to extremely social. We try to strike the balance. None of our youth have to be there, and so youth come because they want to be there. Their parents drive often over 45 minutes to bring them there because their youth want to be there and their parents want them to be there. Other youth find other ways to get there, very creative ways, because they want to be there. So we try to strike that balance. In the past, we have had guest speakers talk about everything from healthy relationships to safer sex practices to managing high school administration. Everything from things along a very educational line to cupcake baking, swing dancing, movie nights, small group discussions. So our programming ranges from very educational to very social, and most of our programming is recommended by the youth themselves based on what they want and what they feel they need.
And what age group is this?
So high school aged youth, so 14 to 18, 14 to 19, is our target population. There are other WAGLYs, there's this alliance of GLBT youth organizations in the state, but we believe of the 14 or 15, we're the only one that actually only focuses on high school aged youth. So we actually have parents and youth who travel outside of our catch area because our average age is 15 or 16, and we cap at 18. And so we try to think of the average GLBTQ 16-year-old's needs and have a very tailored, focused program for that population.
So this is very good. So you have people even from outside your geographic area coming to you. What kind of needs do they typically have at that age? We're talking about, you said the average youth was 16?
Yes.
So what kind of issues do they face in today's world?
So before going into that question, you're exactly right. We have youth who actually come from Providence, Rhode Island.
Wow.
We have a youth who's come from Peabody, a new youth who comes from the Roxbury area. So youth come from outside of where we imagine the youth really coming from. And over the last 4 years of programs, the needs we found have shifted. GLBT high school youth have many of the same needs that all high school youth have. They need access to resources. They want to know about what life after high school, college applications. They want to be provided a social group in order to have peers to complain with, laugh with, like any other high school age youth. But over the years, we found that many of our youth require additional support as well. A lot of our youth come at the recommendation of their therapists. We're not a therapeutic program, we're not a therapy program, but we offer supportive services, and so many of our youth are recommended by their therapists. For some youth, we're actually worked into their home plans, into their therapeutic plans. We have had a great increase of youth who are actually in specialized or therapeutic schools. At any given time, it's not uncommon for a youth to be in a treatment facility of some sort, or getting ready to go into, or just getting out of a treatment facility. So when we go to a meeting on any night of the week, Monday night in particular, for a WAGLY meeting, we know when we look around the room that we have high school aged youth that are dealing with typical average high school issues, but there is also a great number of those youth who are struggling with suicide, thoughts of suicide, alcohol use, drug abuse, maybe not participating in the safest of activities. And when we walk in, the programming that evening might be watching a movie and discussing the GLBT themes contained within it, but at any given time, a youth will pull us aside and need to talk to an adult or be connected with resources because of something going on in their lives.
Wow, this is a great program. Let me try to explore this a little more. So I take it all these children, these young adults who come to the program, many of the reason why it's therapeutic for them is they're struggling with their issues relating to their sexual identity, amongst other things, and society's acceptance of them. So I've been involved I do personal injury work, and it just seems to me that people benefit greatly when they're around people like themselves.
Yes.
And I can relate to that. I think that's wonderful, and I can see where that's therapeutic because they believe more people who are similarly situated, and they learn a lot more from that. But when you say outside services, that an adult would give, like such as what?
So you're right. The youth learn a lot and get supported because they're surrounded by youth in similar places. But the fact that there's adult volunteers that more often than not are either LGBT themselves or are adults of adult LGBT kids who have been through this and can offer themselves as mentors and role models. Many of our youth say that that's one of the top 3 things they get out of the program, is being able to look at adults many years older than themselves and know that they can grow up and become an attorney, they can grow up and have a family, they can be successful. Those might not be the things they're currently worried about. Most youth are worried about being able to go to school and be safe. They're worried about, can they be out fully to their families? Are they going to get into the college or the post-high school program of their choice? But all of them, in some part of their brain, they're thinking about what the future might hold. And for those youth who think the future has nothing in store for them, and they can walk in and they see adults, trained adults, who have lived through many of the same things they've lived through and can share stories about it, that goes a long way. And some of those youth need just an adult to talk to, and the only thing we need to do is listen and ask questions. Other times, youth need to be connected with resources that we can't provide, and we connect them as best we can. Sometimes youth need to bring a whole group of people together. They've maybe mentioned something to their school counselor or a teacher at school, and things aren't moving in the way they think or hope they would, concerning a teacher saying something they wish the teacher hadn't said, or feelings they're having that they can't articulate. And what we can do is, with their permission as appropriate, network with our contacts and their support network that's already in place, and make sure that we can provide the best services possible as part of a larger picture.
Yeah, I can. It's an awful lot of ground you've covered there, but I can understand where a role model does wonders, particularly for a kid going through a lot of trouble dealing with their sexual identity and perhaps having suicidal ideation because they're so depressed about, who they are and what they are. To see LGBTQ people as adults, as succeeding in life, that must be an immeasurable benefit to these kids. So this is a wonderful program that you're putting together in an area where apparently nothing was there.
Outside of some great supportive adults in the high school, there's been nothing in the Metro West area. And as I'm learning, getting to know Metro West Boston, many people look east to Boston for resources.
Yeah.
Many of our youth travel to Boston for therapy, or for our transgender youth and gender non-conforming youth for specialized doctors. And so we're trying to help build Metro West community into a more supportive environment. And the 6 meetings we currently run are just a piece, we hope, of that larger transition.
Dealing with the schools and things like that, I assume you have training for the kids themselves on how they should try to interact with the school administration, or what they should do in a college application, and things like that. I mean, how do you go about that? So,
as we can, we try to have programs, we answer questions, but more often than not, we try to bring in outside speakers. Just this last Monday, we had 2 outside speakers to talk about life after high school. Somebody from Framingham State, for example, who worked in the housing department, who could answer a whole host of questions about what to put on an application, what not to put on an application, how to know how supportive a school is, how to manage being connected with a roommate, how to manage if you're gender non-conforming or transgender and you're applying to a single-sex institution, what does that mean, and how to really ask questions that won't get in the way of your actual ability to apply and become a student. So when we can, we bring in outside people to be able to answer. None of us know everything, and so we try to bring in outside experts when possible. So yes, we do what we can, and more often than not, our youth are wonderful. Our youth, from the beginning, told us the program they wanted, and we've been trying our best to meet that request ever since. And they're not shy. We have peer leaders that get together on a regular basis. They email back and forth every week about what they want future programs to look like. And if they want something, they ask, and they hold us accountable until we do it. And if we do something that they wish we would have done differently, they let us know. And so we're constantly evolving. They are 16-year-olds, and we're grateful for that.
Well, that's great. So you bring in outside experts as needed to consult. I'm sure you brought GLAD in more than one occasion, so it's gay and lesbian advocates and defenders who've been on this show many times, who are amazing. And they have a bullying program I'm sure you've probably used over there. What type of issues are these kids typically dealing with as far as socializing? I mean, do they experience a lot of bullying? Do they deal with a certain amount of homelessness? I mean, what kind of issues are you seeing?
These are all wonderful questions. The youth are so diverse that from youth to youth, the issues vary, and there are some trends that we're noticing, but even then, it's hard to pinpoint down any youth. So one issue, statistically in Massachusetts, the reality we walk into on a Monday night, there are 40 youth looking back at us. And we know, based purely on statistics, that in the last year of GLBT youth, 1 out of every 4 GLBT youth have attempted suicide. Not thought about suicide, not planned suicide, but 1 out of every 4 GLBT high school youth in Massachusetts have attempted suicide. So if we walk in and there are 40 kids looking at us, mostly GLBT, we know based on statistics that 10 of them in the last year have attempted suicide. And so that's